Here's a poem for you by the American poet Ezra Pound. It's the first canto from his immense and often beautiful poem entitled The Cantos. I encourage you to hear this poem as you would hear music, and at least at first, not to be too concerned about understanding it. All right then, here we go. And then went down to the ship, set keel to breakers, forth on the godly sea, and we set up mast and sail on that swart ship, bore sheep aboard her, and our bodies also heavy with weeping, and winds from sternward bore us out onward with bellying canvas, Circe's this craft, the trim coifed goddess. Then sat we amidships, wind jamming the tiller. Thus with stretched sail we went over sea till day's end. Sun to his slumber, shadows o'er all the ocean. Came we then to the bounds of deepest water, to the Cimmerian lands, and peopled cities covered with close-webbed mist, unpierced ever with glitter of sun rays, nor with stars stretched, nor looking back from heaven, swartest night stretched over wretched men there. The ocean flowing backward, came we then to the place aforesaid by Circe. Here did they rites, Paramedes and Eurylochus, and drawing sword from my hip, I dug the L-square pitkin. Poured we libations unto each the dead, first mead and then sweet wine, water mixed with white flour. Then prayed I many a prayer to the sickly death's heads, as set in Ithaca, sterile bulls of the best for sacrifice, heaping the pyre with goods, a sheep to Tiresias only, black and a bell sheep. Dark blood flowed in the fosse, souls out of Erebus, cadaverous dead, of brides, of youths, and of the old who had borne much, souls stained with recent tears, girls tender, men many, mauled with bronze lance-heads, battle spoil, bearing yet dreary arms. These many crowded about me, with shouting, pallor upon me, cried to my men for more beasts, slaughtered the herds, sheep slain of bronze, poured ointment, cried to the gods, to Pluto the strong, and praised Proserpine, unsheathed the narrow sword. I sat to keep off the impetuous, impotent dead, till I should hear Tiresias. But first Elpenor came, our friend Elpenor, unburied, cast on the wide earth, limbs that we left in the house of Circe, unwept, unwrapped in sepulchre, since toils urged other. Pitiful spirit. And I cried in hurried speech, Elpenor, how art thou come to this dark coast? Camest thou afoot, outstripping seamen? And he in heavy speech, ill fate and abundant wine. I slept in Circe's ingle. Going down the long ladder unguarded, I fell against the buttress, shattered the nape nerve, the soul sought Avernus. But thou, O king, I bid remember me, unwept, unburied, heap up mine arms, be tomb by seaboard, and inscribed, a man of no fortune, and with a name to come. And set my oar up, that I swung mid-fellows. And Anticlea came, whom I beat off, and then Tiresias Theban, holding his golden wand, knew me, and spoke first. A second time? Why, man of ill star, facing the sunless dead and this joyless region? Stand from the fosse, leave me my bloody beaver for soothsay. And I stepped back, and he strong with the blood said then, Odysseus, shalt return through spiteful Neptune, over dark seas, lose all companions. And then Anticlea came. Lie quiet, Divus. I mean, that is Andreas Divus, in Officina Wecheli, 1538, out of Homer. And he sailed by Sirens and thence outward and away, and unto Circe. Venerandum, in the Cretans' phrase, with the golden crown, Aphrodite, Cypri munimenta sortita est, mirthful, orichalci, with golden girdles and breastbands, thou with dark eyelids, bearing the golden bough of Argicida, so that... Hello, and welcome to the Crane Bag Podcast. I am Jay Leeming. Today we're going to explore a poem by the American poet Ezra Pound, a poem like a tree with its roots down deep into the darkness, which sustains and nourishes us. Thank you for joining me. Let us begin. Well, I love the weird magic of this poem. Weird, I want to spell that W-Y-R-D. I read this poem, I don't always know what's going on, but I don't care. It's got these weird words in it, and it flickers like a fire in a forest in the dark. And it lights the present moment we are in right now, but it also goes back in an ancient way to the sun and to the stars. And of course, you're hearing it. I'm reading it from a page. The words, well, you heard how some of these words are somewhat strange to us. I dug the L square pitkin, he says at one point. And a word like fosse, which is spelled F-O-S-S-E, an old word for ditch. So these words come at us, and looking at it on the page, here we go, dreary. That's spelled D-R-E-O-R-Y. Amazing. So I suppose you could be someone, any of us could be someone, I too could be someone who would look at this and go, oh, come on, man, give me something I can understand. Talk to me now in our current language. But I don't know. I don't feel that. What I feel is, wow, this is like a tree, and I'm like in a park, I'm looking at this tree, I'm putting my hand on the side of it, but its roots go way deep. They go all the way down. That's what it feels like. They go all the way down. Yeah. So let's climb in this a little bit. I mean, it's from the Odyssey, right? This is a moment I have inhabited. I mean, I'm in such this interesting place now, being a storyteller who has told the Odyssey numerous times, and it's a story I love. And here I am meeting it again in this poem, which I read long before I was a storyteller. And yeah, so it's another visit to this same place. If you know, well, whatever. If you know or don't know, let's just figure out where we are. So it's Odysseus, right? The man who had a hard time coming home from the Trojan War. That's basically it. That's the whole story. There was this war. He fought in it. He had a hard time getting home, but he did get home. He lost all his companions on the way. And for a while, he spent time with Circe, C-I-R-C-E, an enchantress, a magical woman who taught him many things and was also dangerous. You know, she turned his sailors into pigs. That's a whole other story. And then turned them back again. She's just great, a wonderful guide and a teacher to Odysseus. But at some point he says, how do I get home? And she says, you have to go talk to Tiresias. Because Circe's knowledge is great, but Tiresias is greater. He has been both a man and a woman. He has died, and so he's got knowledge beyond the ordinary. Although it's true, Circe is, she's divine, she's nearly a goddess, descended from the Titans as she is. Anyway, but in this moment, in this part of the story, she says, look, if you want to get home, you got to get directions from Tiresias. So Odysseus and his crew, lamenting, wailing, filled with fear and grief, go to the underworld. They sail to the underworld, which in Homer is not exactly below. Well, it is not exactly. It's not below. It's at the edge of things. It's much closer to the land of the dead in the Gilgamesh epic, for example, than it is to the Christian vision of hell, or even to later Greek conceptions of the underworld, so-called. So all that is just to say that this is the moment which Ezra Pound is seizing on to write his poem. He's beginning this huge poem. I got this book here. Let's do a count. It's over 800 pages of poems that he wrote. The Cantos, he called it, the songs, basically. It's a song book, we might say. And that's how he begins his journey, is by going with Odysseus to make offerings to the dead. Fantastic. So that says a lot. It tells us a lot about what Ezra Pound, what other modernists around him, Virginia Woolf, T.S. Eliot, James Joyce, how they felt about going forward. You go forward by going back. Wow. I've heard that from others. I've heard that from musicians and people like that. You go forward by going back. You have to reconcile with the past if you are to push forward into new territories. It almost seems like an eternal law, doesn't it? And if it doesn't to you, well, maybe it will soon. There we are, yeah. So Ezra Pound is going forward by going back, we might say. He is innovating by being connected to the roots of poetry and of art. And I'm thinking also of a recent biography of Bob Dylan, which I read, by Ian Bell. Amazing book. It's two books, actually. And in there somewhere he says, and I'm paraphrasing, the early career of Bob Dylan teaches us that genius is rooted like a tree. Yeah. So Bob Dylan was able to innovate because he was so connected to the folk tradition in America and beyond. So anyway, genius is rooted like a tree. So this poem here that we have on our hands here by Ezra Pound, it is rooted in the past in marvelous ways. And he does that in many ways. I mean, first, just by choosing the Odyssey and this moment in the Odyssey as something to write about. And then, not only the Odyssey, but this particular moment where Odysseus himself is forced to go back and to connect with the ancestors, with his ancestors, if he is to arrive home at a place of safety and of welcome. That's what he must do. Check it out. So Ezra Pound chooses that moment. It's a moment supposedly one of the older chunks of that story. Pound absolutely believed that to be true. Numerous scholars, I'm pretty sure, do as well, that this part of the story is one of the older parts. And then Pound also uses old language, right? Like thou and things like that, words we don't use now. Or when Pound was writing, which was, incidentally, 1921, 1930. He revised this somewhat. So he uses words like thou and afoot and forth, like right away in the second line. And then went down to the ship, set keel to breakers, forth on the godly sea. Yeah, so we don't talk that way now, and didn't in 1930. But Pound is throwing it in there to give us this sense of something majestic and old. He also just straight up uses wild words that we totally don't know, like fosse, F-O-S-S-E, which is an antiquated English word for a ditch. Or this one's tricky, beaver, B-E-V-E-R, which just means drink. It does not mean a furry mammal with a big tail. Beaver, a drink. And this stuff is all through this poem. I think those are the big stoppers, There's a bunch of Latin at the end, but we'll get to that. Ingle. Yeah, ingle just means a hearth or a chimney corner. That's what the note here says. Circe's ingle. So he uses this old language, which might or might not bother you. I mean, when I read it, like I say, it doesn't really bug me. I just kind of appreciate it. It's like going into your backyard and finding like a trilobite fossil or something. It's like, wow, I don't know what this is, but it's cool. Also, he's using other ways of connecting with the past. He is, well, let's see, it's complicated. He's coming here not from Homer directly, Homer the ancient poet, but from a Latin version, a Latin translation of Homer done in the Renaissance, 15 something or other, 15, well, he says right in the poem. So already we're a little bit removed from Homer himself. Yeah, 1538. A guy named Andreas Divis translated Homer from Greek into Latin, and that's the version which Ezra Pound found in a bookshop in Paris and picked up and was excited by, and that's what he is responding to in this poem. And not only that, but he is also giving us some Anglo-Saxon metrical action here. So English, the language we're talking right now, comes from Anglo-Saxon. It's basically Anglo-Saxon with a bunch of Latin and French on top of it. So to give you a very brief description, so he's using Anglo-Saxon meter in much of this poem. And what's Anglo-Saxon meter? Well, this is a line of poetry which has 4 beats to the line. And there's a pause or a caesura in the middle of the line. So Beowulf is written this way. All Anglo-Saxon poetry is written this way. Cadman's hymn as well. Nushel and Herion, haven reaches word. Methodus merta and his mode ye thunk. So those are the first 2 lines of Cadman's hymn. The first 2 stresses or beats of the line have the same sound at the beginning. There's alliteration happening. So in that case, Nushel and Herion, haven reaches word, Methodus merta, and his mode ye thunk. So M, that's the sound that's going to be repeated here. And you put it twice in the first half of the line to show that that's the one to look for. And then you repeat it once more, usually, in the second half of the line. But you improvise over that. So it's not always that way. I mean, that would be super boring. But in general, that's the structure. So Beowulf, same deal. What way Gardena on yard dagum, Theod Kinninga, Thrim Gefrunan. Hutha Aethalingas Ellen Fremedon, oft shield chafing, Shathena Threatum. See, there you go. Oft shield chafing, Shathena Threatum. So SH is the sound repeated, and it's twice in the first half of the line, once in the second. Oft shield chafing, Shathena Threatum. Monogum methum medoset loftea, egosad orla, sithan erest warth. Wow, if you want to sound like, I don't know, some cool Gandalf wizard person, Beowulf's a good place to start. So that's the alliterative meter of Anglo-Saxon poetry, and Pound is using that in this poem somewhat loosely, but he is using it, and it shows up, in many places from the beginning here, and then went down to the ship, set keel to breakers, forth on the godly sea, and we set up mast and sail on that swart ship, bore sheep aboard her, and our bodies also. Do you hear that? Bore sheep aboard her, and our bodies also. So the B is the sound repeated twice in the first half, bore sheep aboard her, and our bodies also. Heavy with weeping and winds from sternward, bore us out onward with bellying canvas. Circe's this craft, the trim-coiffed goddess. So it's loose compared to like Beowulf, but it is nevertheless there. So we get this wild ride that Pound is taking us on. We who have been brought to this place where we speak to ghosts. And he does it not only through the subject matter of this poem, but through the way he's talking about it. First by throwing in these older words, forth and thou and things like that. But then we've got this Anglo-Saxon meter, which is right there at the start of the English language. So we're standing there with Odysseus through the story of Homer, also through this Renaissance translation into Latin by Andreas Divis of that story, of that poem. And then also we're going through the Anglo-Saxon meter as well into something at times like modern English. So it's wild. It's not stereo. It's like quadraphonic. So, I mean, all of these levels are happening at once. Could you do that in sculpture, in painting, in a show, in a play or a drama? Well, you could, but in a different way, perhaps. Here, it's just really remarkable how he layers these things on top of one another in this poem. And then towards the end, he breaks off. And he sort of steps back, right? And he says, "Lie quiet, Divis." I mean, that is Andreas Divis. So in the middle of this poem, well, at the end of this poem, which is filled with sort of grand language, forth on the godly sea, suddenly he breaks in and he's like, "Lie quiet, Divis." I mean, that is Andreas Divis. I love that "I mean." It's something you would say in conversation, not something you would like inscribe on a granite stone, right? So he just breaks in and he's like, "Oh, this is this guy Divis, and lie quiet." So Andreas Divis is dead, right? And it's as if these ghosts are swarming about Ezra Pound, just as they swarm around Odysseus, who in the end of his time in the land of the dead just turns and runs with all of his sailors away from the land of the dead because the ghosts are just thronging around them, hungry for that blood. So Pound has a similar moment, where he turns and runs in a way, runs from the underworld. Because it's like, "Mr. Andreas Divis, just remain dead, will you? Don't wake up again and tell me how to write this poem." Because he's quoting him, or not quoting him, he's responding to Divis's poem, his translation of the Odyssey, but he wants Divis to remain dead and not like stand up and walk around and tell him how to write his poem, which is cool. And then we get this wonderful visitation by Aphrodite, just at the end of this poem. Like, what do you want when you leave the realm of shadows, death, and ash? You want love. You want beauty. Yeah. So Aphrodite arrives. And that's at the end of the poem here. "Venerandum," he says, "worthy of reverence" in Latin. "With the golden crown, Aphrodite, with golden girdles and breastbands, thou with dark eyelids bearing the golden bow of Argicida." So what we have in this poem by Ezra Pound is we've got most of it is Odysseus offering blood to the ghosts. And then at the end, we get this scrap, this little chunk of a hymn to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, which is just remarkable. It's a remarkable juxtaposition. We're down there with blood and death and darkness. And suddenly we turn and there is Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, with golden girdles and breastbands, thou with dark eyelids. He's saying thou, he is speaking to her, bearing the golden bow of Argicida. So just to explain that, Argicida, that's the golden bow carried by Hermes, which is because Hermes was the slayer of Argos, which was a guardian with many eyes in his head, and Hermes killed him, and one of his names is Argicida. So Hermes shows up, this god of quickness and messages and of borders as well, crossing boundaries. So we've crossed a boundary to get to the underworld. We're hopefully crossing back into life. And this comes right at the end of this poem, So he says, with golden girdles and breastbands, thou with dark eyelids, bearing the golden bow of Argicida, so that. And there's a colon there, so that, colon, and that's the end of this poem, which I find just marvelous. It's a cliffhanger, right? You're like, so that what? Well, so that everything, maybe. So that all of history could happen, possibly. We offer blood to the ghosts. We praise Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, and we move forward. I'm also thinking here of the river Oceanus, which in the ancient Greek conception went all around the world. It was a circular river flowing always into itself, eternal. It's the river out of which the gods came, says Homer at one place in the Odyssey. So it is eternal and always flowing. I'm thinking of that, and this poem is like that, and it hungers for that. It aspires to connect with that in many ways, but two that come to mind are the first line is, and then went down to the ship, comma. Like, what the heck is that? It's like the poem is beginning in the middle of something. It's beginning with and, right? It's like this happened, and then, bam, this happened. So it's beginning in medias res, as we would say. And then the end is the same way. So that, colon. So the poem beckons towards a past and a future. It takes part in these things. It wants to be part of a ever-flowing stream of beauty and of knowledge, which is eternal. And it aspires to be a part of that and to be like that river, to flow and to have no end, as life, hopefully, can have no end, as consciousness, as beauty can have no end. So really, I find this a remarkable poem. It's great to memorize, just to really hear that music. I mean, man, some of these sentences, they're so strange, but great. I mean, the word order is all wacky, partly because he's coming from Latin, I would think. But, men many mauled with bronze lance heads, battle spoil bearing yet dreary arms, these many crowded about me. I mean, the word order is strange, unusual, but effective and interesting. He also uses we a lot, or simply omits the pronoun entirely, like at the beginning, and then went down to the ship. Like, who went down? We went down, I went down, you went down. Well, maybe all of the above. Maybe that's why there's no pronoun there, because he wants to invite us into the poem, so that we too are standing there by that bloody ditch, watching the ghosts come to us, watching Tiresias come to us and give us instructions about how we may come home. Ezra Pound led an intense and interesting life. He was at the heart of many of the literary revolutions of the early 20th century, of the first half of the century. And he helped and assisted many other artists, writers, folks like Hemingway, Joyce, Eliot, William Carlos Williams. So a very interesting figure. He also was anti-Semitic for much of his life and supported Mussolini. He gave these radio broadcasts in Italy supporting Mussolini and was tried as a war criminal at the end of World War II, put in a cage and lived in a cage in Italy for like a long time, was eventually declared insane and for that reason escaped the death penalty, which was looming for traitors to the U.S. government. He later regretted his positions in regard to Jews, in regard to fascism. He called his anti-Semitism in particular a mistake later, towards the end of his life. So that's all there. It's all part of the bound up with the story of Ezra Pound. But I would say it's dangerous to only take in art by people you agree with, to only take in art by people whose political opinions you agree with, Was Virginia Woolf a nice person, or Eliot, or Joni Mitchell, or Metallica, for that matter? What about the Wu-Tang Clan, or Michael Jackson? I don't listen to Michael Jackson because of his political opinions. I don't even know what they are, honestly. But he's an amazing genius musician. That's why I listen to him, So with Ezra Pound, I feel the same way. He's flawed, like all of us are, if we really look honestly. But there is great beauty there in much of his work that is very inspiring. And Aphrodite does show up throughout the Cantos, throughout this long and epic poem. Beauty arrives and dazzles us. So here, just for comparison, is the beginning of Book 11 of the Odyssey. as translated by A.T. Murray. This is in the Loeb edition from 1995. This is a pretty. This is a prose translation, so it's big on the accuracy and less so on the poetry. But I'll just read you the first two paragraphs to show you something of the situation that Ezra Pound is talking about. And this is Odysseus speaking here at this part of the poem. But when we had come down to the ship and to the sea, first of all we drew the ship down to the bright sea, and set the mast and sail in the black ship, and took the sheep and put them aboard, and ourselves embarked, sorrowing and shedding big tears. And for our aid in the wake of our dark-prowed ship, a fair wind that filled the sail, a good comrade, was sent by fair-tressed Circe, dread goddess of human speech. So when we had made fast all the tackling throughout the ship, we sat down, and the wind and the helmsman made straight her course. All the day long her sail was stretched as she sped over the sea, and the sun set, and all the ways grew dark. She came to deep-flowing Oceanus that bounds the earth, where is the land and city of the Cimmerians, wrapped in mist and cloud. Never does the bright sun look down on them with his rays, either when he mounts the starry heaven or when he turns again to earth from heaven, but instead horrid night is spread over wretched mortals. There we came and beached our ship, and took out the sheep, and ourselves went along beside the stream of Oceanus until we came to the place of which Circe had told us. So there you have it. In the Greek, oh boy, well, autar epe chrepi nea katel thoan ede thalassen. Neamen ar pamproton erusamen es aladian. Ende histon tithemista kai istia nei melene. Sorry, histia nei melene. All right, well, I'm not a champion Greek scholar, but it's nice just to have those words a little bit closer towards what they really sound like than the English. So, all right, thank you for listening to this. Here, let's read this poem one more time. Let's let it sizzle in the pan of our thoughts. It's, I've said this before, but when I was living in Yosemite National Park for 4 months every year a while back, I really hungered for big things, eternal things, granite, sequoia trees. And I would be out there and I'd look at those rocks, which were millions of years old. And I would look at those trees, thousands of years old. And I would talk about the stars. I did star programs at night, light years away, very old. And it was reassuring to me. These things are the past, but they're also the future, because it's going to take a lot to, wear down a granite mountain, for example. So I feel this way about Pound's poem, and I share this aspiration to connect with the future and the past through these eternal things that flow like the river Oceanus. That's one of the many reasons why I'm a storyteller. I mean, there's 20 different reasons probably, like feathers on a bird, and they help the bird to fly. But one of those feathers is this one, that I seek to connect with the past and with the future. And the present, to bring those things here into the present alive and kicking. I tell the Odyssey. You can find it on my website. I forget which episode is The Land of the Dead, but it's in there, number 6, number 7 maybe. So I aspire to that, and that's a basic human desire many of us have. And why? Because we die. Because we don't live forever. Because our lives are brief. And we hunger for something eternal. So, that's how I feel. And that's where I'm coming from. So here's this poem once more for you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for spending this time with me and with this poem. And then went down to the ship, set keel to breakers, forth on the godly sea. And we set up mast and sail on that swart ship, bore sheep aboard her, and our bodies also heavy with weeping. And winds from sternward bore us out onward with bellying canvas. Circe's this craft, the trim coifed goddess. Then sat we amidships, wind jamming the tiller. Thus with stretched sail we went over sea till day's end. Sun to his slumber, shadows o'er all the ocean. Came we then to the bounds of deepest water, to the Cimmerian lands, and peopled cities covered with close-webbed mist, unpierced ever with glitter of sun rays, nor with stars stretched, nor looking back from heaven, swardest night stretched over wretched men there. The ocean flowing backward, came we then to the place aforesaid by Circe. Here did they rites, Perimedes and Eurylochus, and drawing sword from my hip, I dug the L-square pitkin. Poured we libations unto each the dead, first mead and then sweet wine, water mixed with white flour. Then prayed I many a prayer to the sickly death's heads, as set in Ithaca, sterile bulls of the best for sacrifice, heaping the pyre with goods, a sheep to Tiresias only, black and a bell sheep. Dark blood flowed in the fosse, souls out of Erebus, cadaverous dead, of brides, of youths, and of the old who had borne much, souls stained with recent tears, girls tender, men many, mauled with bronze lance-heads, battle spoil, bearing yet dreary arms. These many crowded about me, with shouting, pallor upon me, cried to my men for more beasts, slaughtered the herds, sheep slain of bronze, poured ointment, cried to the gods, to Pluto the strong, and praised Proserpine. Unsheathed the narrow sword, I sat to keep off the impetuous, impotent dead, till I should hear Tiresias. But first Elpenor came, our friend Elpenor, unburied, cast on the wide earth. Limbs that we left in the house of Circe, unwept, unwrapped in sepulchre, since toils urged other, pitiful spirit. And I cried in hurried speech, Elpenor, how art thou come to this dark coast? Camest thou afoot, outstripping seamen? And he, in heavy speech, ill fate and abundant wine. I slept in Circe's ingle. Going down the long ladder unguarded, I fell against the buttress, shattered the nape nerve, the soul sought Avernus. But thou, O king, I bid remember me. Unwept, unburied, heap up mine arms, be tomb by seaboard, and inscribed, a man of no fortune, and with a name to come. And set my oar up, that I swung mid-fellows. And Anticlea came, whom I beat off, and then Tiresias Theban, holding his golden wand, knew me, and spoke first. A second time? Why, man of ill star, facing the sunless dead in this joyless region? Stand from the fosse, leave me my bloody beaver for soothsay. And I stepped back, and he strong with the blood said then, Odysseus shall return through spiteful Neptune, over dark seas, lose all companions. And then Anticlea came. Lie quiet, Divus, that is Andreas Divus, in Officina Wecheli, 1538 out of Homer. And he sailed by Sirens and thence outward and away, and unto Circe. Venerandum, in the Cretans' phrase, with the golden crown, Aphrodite. Cypria munimenta sortita est, mirthful, or a Chalce, with golden girdles and breastbands, thou with dark eyelids, bearing the golden bow of Argicida, so that. you.